From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OSU update with Kyle Fredrickson. I'm Jenni Carlson. Kyle, the Cowboys are off and running on spring practice, and I guess running may be the operative word. A lot of talk about the running back situation, about the offense, with a bunch of new assistants. Mike Gundy and several of his staff members, a couple players, met with the media on Monday. You dove into some of this run game issue, new running backs coach. What can we expect out of the run game? They obviously have a couple guys coming in we're not even going to get to see this spring.
Right, and you know that's really was kind of the big topic yesterday. There's so many things that the Cowboys have to be optimistic about next year. Returning Mason Rudolph, so many starters in offense and defense. But it's really an overhaul of the run game when we're looking at this next season. You know, you've got running backs coach, offensive line coach, and a tight ends fullback coach who are all going to be very critical in developing this run game that ranked near the bottom of the NCAA in yards per game last season. So just from a coaching standpoint, a ton of turnover, and that's before we even get to who actually is going to carry the ball.
Right.
Desmond Rowland fulfills his eligibility. You bring back junior Rennie Childs, who certainly has shown flashes of being a guy capable of taking over that #1 role. He's dealt with some injuries in both of his seasons over the past 2 years. You wonder if he's durable enough to carry on a 20 to 25 carry a game load. But you know, also all the things that we've heard about through summer is that he's really dedicated himself to being that guy. He understands this is his opportunity. But like you had mentioned, summer's going to roll around. Chris Carson's going to come into town. Jeff Carr's going to come into town. Two guys who Coach Gundy is extremely high on and figure to compete from day one. So it's not necessarily a time to press the panic button on the run game.
Right.
There's a lot of pieces that are there to like. You know, offensive line is still a concern. It's the one thing that Mike Gundy said he was still a bit worried about entering spring practice. But there's a lot of depth there, a lot of pieces. The Cowboys just have to figure out how to make it all work.
I thought an interesting side note on the run game was that Todd May is a guy who kind of came in as an athlete quarterback type. He's going to see a lot of time at running back this spring, so it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. One of the big news bits from the Mike Gundy press conference was Dax Garman's future, as we had heard that basically Mike Gundy had said to Dax, you have until Monday, the start of spring practice, to decide what you're going to do. Dax Garman's transferring. Any surprise there? And I guess now looking ahead with the Cowboys, what does this mean for the quarterback position?
I don't think there should be too much surprise here. You know, as we've seen throughout Garman's career, whether it's been his 3 transfers in high school and now his 2 transfers at the college level, this is a guy who's always wanted his opportunity to start and play. And it's hard to fault him. You know, we saw flashes of how good Dax can be last year. It's kind of hard to remember those early weeks after such a tough slide the Cowboys went through. But this is a guy who can really sling it. You know, and as the season progressed and as the offensive line was really exploited against better teams, you know, I think he kind of got it in his head that, you know, every time he was going to drop back, the pressure was going to be there.
Right.
You know, Mike Gundy, being a former quarterback, knows that psychological effect better than anyone. That's why he's probably been so outspoken about his appreciation for Dax. So, you know, he could go to maybe North Texas, maybe go to SMU, you know, closer to where his family is, and get an opportunity. But in terms of impacting the team, not a whole lot of impact. You return J.W. Walsh as that solid backup guy. Mason Rudolph is the clear-cut starter. Barring some kind of quarterback craziness like we've seen in the past at times, you know, I think the Cowboys should be in good shape. You know, in that third slot, you got a guy like Todd Mays who could come in and play quarterback. John Kolar might redshirt this year, but if he was needed, you know, there's another guy who could take snaps. So they're certainly good at the quarterback position. But yeah, you know, with Garman leaving, certainly makes his short stint in Stillwater pretty interesting. You know, it's kind of a streak through the sky with some big plays and a lot of tough times as well.
Yeah, you know, interesting too is you think about the future of that position. Mike Gundy saying on Monday that Mason Rudolph, who came into campus at about 215, 217 weight-wise, is now in the 235 to 240 range. So he's adding some weight, trying to make himself sturdier to avoid injuries as hits are coming, those sorts of things, which I think should probably make people breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief.
Definitely,
with that.
Especially when he's tackling linebackers after he throws interceptions. It's good to have a few extra LBs to be prepared for that.
Right, definitely. Lastly, let's talk about roster changes because we got a new roster and there were some names gone from the roster. Some we expected, some we did not. What did you think of some of those, and who are sort of at the top of your list on those guys that are gone?
Yeah, you know, it's pretty interesting. I think the two of the more notable guys missing from that list being Rashad Samples and Blake Webb, two inside wide receivers who at points in their career were pretty highly touted. These were guys who were expected to make contributions, but as we saw this last year, the receiving core is so deep. They have so many guys at really every spot inside and out who have been productive. So those two guys are gone. You know, it's interesting that a guy like Matt Kellerman, a JUCO offensive lineman who was a spring early enrollee, kind of figures to be one of those instant impact, instant kind of veteran guys to plug into the line. Apparently had some kind of issue and has left the program. That's another name that stands out. And another guy who's not listed on the roster was Devin Davis. You know, the offensive lineman who had dealt with so many knee issues. You know, Gundy had made a comment that, you know, some of these guys are off the team, some of them are injured. That's why they're not on the roster. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if his name pops back up in the fall. But as of right now, you know, he won't be participating in spring.
And a guy that when he got hurt was expected to be the best offensive lineman that they had. Just a catastrophic knee injury, though. We hope the best for him, whatever the situation is. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.